With polls in New Jersey closing in about 72 hours, the New Jersey gubernatorial election is a real nail-biter. Right now, Sherrill leads by about 3.3% polls, with most polls suggesting that this race will be decided between 1 and 4%. This race is extremely competitive, especially when considering that Phil Murphy, the Democratic governor back in 2021, in that race was overestimated by 5%. This race could easily go in either direction. So in this video, I'll explain how Chiarelli could win this race and what my prediction is heading into this election. Now, many people remain skeptical that Jack Chiarelli has a realistic chance. Most people still think that Mikey Sherrill is the clear favorite in a state that is traditionally more Democratic. While Sherrill holds a very substantial chance of winning according to betting markets, it's important to note that Chiarelli's odds have really skyrocketed in recent weeks, with polls suggesting that this race is far more competitive than what it was maybe just a few weeks ago. At around the August-September window, Sherrill was up anywhere between 8 to 10 points, and now that lead has shrunk to about 3.3%, with the addition of some of the newest polls, with no polls really suggesting that this race is truly outside the margin of error. It's really anyone's race, and it's going to be very competitive. Jack Chiarelli is a surprisingly strong candidate, and that even though he did lose by a little bit back in 2021, it was a very competitive election against an incumbent governor who was significantly more well-funded, and Chiarelli himself effectively gave up. All those factors will not occur in 2025. Now we look at some of the early numbers. The early numbers admittedly look a bit better for the Democratic Party, as they hold about 24% advantage in the early absentee ballots, with a lot of voters already voting. That being said, advance votes are typically more favorable to the Democratic Party. When we look at 2024, Democrats had about an additional 5% edge in the advance voting, as they did compared to all of the ballots that were sent on, especially in Election Day. Furthermore, the early ballots, so the ballots that kind of come back at the start of early voting, is typically even more Democratic, and as such, this race is still anybody's game here. It's important to note that just because someone votes Democratic, someone is Democratically affiliated, does not mean they're going to vote Democratic. Kamala Harris won the state of New Jersey by 6, yet Democrats led in all ballots by 12 and in advance voting by 17%, suggesting that these numbers are not often very accurate, not to mention that Jack Chiarelli is someone who is a relatively strong candidate. Now the question is, how could the Republican Party actually win this race? The answer is very simple: suburban areas as well as turnout. We can compare the 2020 election results with 2021, and you'll see what I mean. In some of the urban areas back in 2020, when Joe Biden won the state by over 15%, there was relatively high turnout in Democratic areas like Essex County, where turnout was about 350,000 votes. In an area where Democrats are winning over 3/4 of the electorate, turnout is key for the Democratic Party. However, turnout in 2021 in the gubernatorial level was cut pretty much in half. In fact, by more than that, it was cut to about 45 to 50% of the presidential turnout. While if you compare the most conservative populated county, Ocean County, turnout only dropped by about 30%. And that turnout difference really helped Jack Chiarelli make the gubernatorial election more competitive. Also, Jack Chiarelli was able to do better in some of the more suburban areas, such as, for example, Passaic County. Passaic voted for Biden by 17, but only Phil Murphy by about 4%. These are numbers Jack Chiarelli wants to replicate, and he also wants higher turnout. Even though the current ballots returned don't look that good for the Republican Party, based on early numbers, Republican counties are turning up at higher numbers, and that is a good sign for Jack Chiarelli. Realistically, he could just simply replicate his 2021 numbers if Democratic areas have a little bit more depressed turnout. Now, turnout based on the current numbers is universally quite high, as if you look at right now in 2025 so far, there has already been nearly 1 million votes, while at the same time in 2024 on the presidential level, it was at 1.45 million. Gubernatorial elections typically have less than 2/3 turnout of the presidential one, so right now turnout is actually quite good. And we'll have to wait and see to see what happens. Now for my prediction, who do I think will win? It's a good question. It's going to be a competitive race. I think that Jack Chiarelli has a good shot. We've seen that he is able to do quite well in the polls. But I still think that at the end of the day, if you're a Republican, it's going to be more difficult to win in a New Jersey gubernatorial election. Obviously, it's still going to be a very close race. But I would have to say that as of right now, I think Chiarelli will probably lose by about 2%, so even closer to 2021, but I think he'll fall short just because it's a presidential year where the incumbent president is a Republican. That's generally not a good thing for the party who's trying to win a gubernatorial election. Ultimately, we'll know in about 72 hours. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.